inside of the church, inside of the way that we grew up, it was so abstract because they were just like, if you don't find yourself in the center of God's will, you will be a miserable person for the rest of your life. And that scared the crap out of me because I was like, that sounds like a horrible existence on earth to be miserable for the rest of my life. So let me desperately try to find out this abstract idea of what God's will is. Like, what does that mean? How do I find that? How do I know if I'm in it? How do I know if I'm not in it?
Constant fear that you weren't in it.
Yeah. And it's a self-overcoming objection to the entire idea because like, oh, if you're unhappy, that has nothing to do with your religion or spirituality or God. That just means that you're not spiritual enough and you're not close enough to God because you're not in God's will. So you just need to figure that out. Once you figure that out, then you're going to be happy. Yeah. It's not a problem with the foundation or the belief system. It's a problem with you, and you need to figure out what God's will is for your life. And if you don't go to church, you're not saved, and all these other things, you clearly can't be in God's will. Therefore, you must be miserable. And so when I got to know these people and saw that like they don't seem like they're that bad off, especially compared to the people that I knew in the church that I knew to be miserable.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, this is clearly not the thing that, dictates whether or not you live a happy or fulfilled life.
But that's the thing that was, that's the thing that was tricky for me is that I started seeing that split where it was like, there's people I know are miserable and hate their life and aren't acting in a way that's right. You know what I mean? And
or like they don't drink, but they seem to kind of be a dick. You know what I mean? Like they're judgmental and rude to people for no reason that they don't even know. Like that seems worse to me than like getting a tattoo or whatever.
Yeah. It for me, the best way I can explain is like when I deconstructed and said like I'm leaving Christianity, like I had a pastor say, oh, you focused on the bad things. And I think working backward from that statement of like, oh, you focused on the bad, so you only saw the bad, so you're reacting to what you focused on, which was the bad. And I look back at my life and I look at, the abuses and the cover-ups, like with myself, with other people, with, then going into ministry and, making 11 grand in a year, or going into, getting fired because I don't want to pray around an American flag for Donald Trump to win his presidency, or getting, seeing very abusive people get one counseling session and they're back into a position of power. Like for me, it felt like the bad things seemed to be focused on the epicenter I was in, which is the church. And so for me, like the sledgehammer was it was a long swing, and a smash of just like, I'm going from like independent Baptist to Southern Baptist to ministry, to being a kid in the ministry, to more, liberal churches, more conservative churches. And it seems like this stuff's following me. And so for me, it came to a point where I was like, if we're claiming this absolute truth or this like transformational religious experience, why are we acting not only the same as everybody else, but like worse? Yeah. Like Hollywood saw we have a predator, Me Too movement happens. We started addressing it, going full bore on this. Church 2 came 2 years later. Like the church was behind. And it seems like if there is some kind of supernatural morality that's coming in, that would be cleaned up way ahead of time. Yeah. And the church is consistently behind the curve. So for me, like my sledgehammer moment was just seeing it not add up in real time for years and not being able to reconcile that anymore.
Yeah, that's the point I think that it got to for all of us, is when you can't reconcile it anymore. When you can't draw the conclusion from something that happens. It's just like, this isn't quite adding up at this point. I don't know how to unsee it.
Yeah.
That's like you see it, you can't unsee it.